A very warm welcome to our English First Additional Language Lessons by Miss T.L.L. We are still delving deeper into the language dynamics. Remember, paper 1 is quite critical because it's at the heartbeat of the three papers that we have in English EnglishFal. Now, without any waste of time, today's lesson is going to be centered around the use of question tags. And first and foremost, I think it is important to firstly establish what is that we mean by a question tag. A question tag is a phrase that is formulated from an auxiliary verb most of the time that is added at the end of the statement to affirm the statement or to strengthen the question or to formulate a question from that particular statement, right? And then we are going to learn how to formulate a question tag. But what I've noted that we need to start with in our introductory phase or part of the lesson is to distinguish between a positive and a negative question tag. If I say is he with a question mark, and then I say here isn't he with a question mark after a particular statement, the question might be, what's the difference between the two? This is a positive question tag because it is not contracted with the use of an apostrophe mark, and this is a negative question tag because it has been contracted with the use of an apostrophe mark. Remember, apostrophe mark has two purposes: it is to contract words that which we call contractions. Like if I don't want to say cannot, I say can't. And then again, another purpose of an apostrophe mark is to show possession. But here we are not dealing with possession. I'm just enlightening you so that you know for future references the purpose, or if not the function, of an apostrophe mark. However, we are more interested in formulating contractions in such a way that we end up having a negative question tag. Now, if the statement is positive, the question tag becomes negative, and if the statement is negative, the question tag becomes how? Positive. So we have distinguished between a positive and a negative question tag. But now we have to learn how to formulate them using various statements, and we are going to have multiple questions, if not multiple statements, that we are going to use to formulate question tags. Right, now let us go through the first examples that we have. We are going to focus firstly on the positive question tags, and remember, for us to formulate a positive question tag, we must have a negative statement. And how do we know that a statement is negative? I think it is also crucial, learners, that you know how to distinguish between a positive statement and a negative statement. If I say I am sick, it's a positive statement. But once I say I am not, I've added the negative aspect by introducing the word not. So the word not makes or converts the statement from a positive to a negative. So first and foremost, please ensure that you know how to distinguish between a positive question tag and a negative question tag. Now, as I've already alluded in the beginning of the lesson, or in the introductory phase of the lesson, I said that if the statement is negative, the question tag becomes positive. Now that we have learned and established, we now have to learn how to formulate a question tag. Let us look at the first statement that we have. Tom won't be late. So won't makes this statement to become negative. So every time we are going to use our auxiliary verbs, but remember, it's not all the sentences that will include auxiliary verbs that we may use to formulate a question tag. We are going to see that when we do with using various statements. They don't is a contraction for do not, like us. This is negative. That isn't George over there. This is an auxiliary verb that we are going to use to formulate a question tag. Now, every time it's going to be an auxiliary verb here, and then plus the subject of the sentence. Remember, the subject is any person or anything that performs the action in a sentence. And with the subject, we are not going to use names in a question tag, but the names of people will be substituted by what? By pronouns. So it's going to be an auxiliary verb plus an object, then a question mark. That's how we formulate a question tag. So Tom won't be late. Won't changes to become will. Remember here, I don't expect all these question tags to be contracted because they are positive. So it's going to be will he. Remember, I said we don't include a name. So instead of using a name, we are going to say he. And then Tom won't be late. Will he? Now it becomes a question tag. Another statement, they don't like us. Remember, this is a negative, so we have to convert it into a positive. And how do you see that it's a negative? It is contracted with the use of an apostrophe mark. So if it's not contracted, you know that ultimately it becomes a positive question tag. So when we add a question tag here, it's going to be do. We change don't to become do into a positive, and then our object here is they. Remember, always is auxiliary plus an object. Plus the subject of the sentence. So it's going to be do they. It's a positive question tag. That isn't George over there. So in English, grammatically, you can say is that. It won't make sense. It won't make grammatically. It won't make any logic. But then you will say is that. It changes to become what? Is it? Is it becomes what? Our positive question tag. And then now, and normally we use negative question tags with a positive sentence. Here we have been dealing with negative statements. Let us see how we change a positive statement. And will be here soon. We are going to use will to formulate a question tag. We are going to use should to formulate a question tag. We are going to use where to formulate a question tag. These are the auxiliary verbs that we will use to formulate question tags. And if the statement is positive, ultimately the question tag is going to become how? It's going to become negative. And how do we see that it's negative? It's when it is contracted. Now I want us to revisit one here and one here. And will be here soon. Now if the statement included will changes to become won't she. Won't she. It needs to be contracted so that it becomes what? A negative question tag. But now let us study what is unique between Tom won't be late and then N will be here. If the statement include won't should be changed to will in a question tag. If the statement includes will should be changed to won't in a question tag. Right, let us move along. Tom should pass his exam. Remember, we have Tom and then we don't include names. I did say that names are substituted with what? Pronouns. Tom should pass his exam. You look at the statement is positive. That means we need to contract this auxiliary verb so that we change it into a negative question tag. Tom should pass his exam. Shouldn't he? Now this becomes our negative question tag that is added to affirm or to strengthen or to confirm the statement. Remember, question tags are used to confirm or to affirm or to strengthen or to formulate a question from a statement. And then the last from the examples that we have, they were very angry. You look at where is the auxiliary verb and it's in a positive. We are going to contract it in such a way that we formulate it into a negative because the statement is how? Positive. And then remember, the subject here is already they. So we don't need to change it. We take it the way it is. It's going to be went they, then that becomes our negative question text. Now let us look into various sentences that which in other instances they may not necessarily include auxiliary verbs that we may use to formulate a question text. So we need to know, in the absence of auxiliary verbs, what is that are we going to use to formulate a question text? Let us look into various sentences again. Right, now I want us to study the sentences here. We have already established what we mean by a question tag, how to use various question tag for different sentences. Now we are going to look into the sentences and then we are going to add question tags. Remember, for you to add a question tag, you look whether the sentence has an auxiliary verb and then you check if the statement is negative or if the statement is how positive, so that you know which question tag to include in that particular statement. He is late this morning. This statement is positive and then I've got the auxiliary verb is here. So that means that I'm going to say isn't he. So it's auxiliary plus subject. The subject already is in a pronoun. And then by contracting it, I've turned it into a negative. So therefore, the statement is positive. Then the question tag becomes how? Negative. The hotel was quite good. Now we look into the statement. Again, we've got an auxiliary verb that we can use to formulate a question tag. We've got the word was, and then we've got the word there. So we can't say wasn't there. We are going to say wasn't it. So we formulate a question tag that is negative because the statement is how? because the statement is positive. So it's going to be wasn't it. We change that there to become it. You must be careful with the subjects when you change when you add question text. Please ensure that the subject that needs to be changed, they are changed accordingly. And then she cooks well. Now this sentence is quite unique because unlike the examples that we did in the beginning of the lesson, we do not necessarily have auxiliary verbs to use. Now we have words such as don't, does, did. These we can use in the absence of auxiliary verbs in a particular sentence. Now this sentence, let us check the tense. Tense is also important. She cooks well. Now cooks with S, it means that the action is being performed currently or presently. That means this is a present tense. So we are going to say, and the statement is in a positive, so the question tag must become negative. That's where now we are going to say doesn't she. Remember, why are we using does here? We did not have any auxiliary verb. However, the sentence was in a present tense, and then that's where now we use the word doesn't she. Doesn't is contracted because the statement was positive, so therefore I expect the question tag to become negative. You can't tell the difference. We've got something to use here. We've got an can't. This is negative. Then I expect the question tag to become how? Positive. So we are going to say can you? Can you? Right. They always sleep after lunch. Similar to question 3, we have question 5 again, where we do not necessarily have an auxiliary verb to use. They always sleep, so they is the plural form, then it's in a present tense. However, here it was a present tense, but the subject was in a singular form, right? Now, here we have they, so we can't say doesn't they. We are going to say don't they. Why are we not using does but using don't? Because the subject is in a plural form. Then here we are going to say don't they, because the statement is how? The statement is positive, so the question tag must become negative. You are coming with us. It's a contraction for you are coming with us. So you are, it's a positive statement. We'll have the word are to use, even though it's contracted, so we are going to say and you. Remember, this is question 5. Examiners will always ask you to add question text, right? Mary plays football. We've got the same sentences as sentence 3, where we do not have an auxiliary verb to use, but we know if the subject is in a singular form and the verb carries an S, we are going to use what? Does. So Mary, remember, we are going to say doesn't. We don't include names. Don't forget, we don't include names. The names are substituted with a pronoun. We are going to say doesn't she. You didn't have any lesson this morning. Then we have a contracted didn't. This statement is negative, so I expect our question tag to become positive. So of course we've got something to use here. We are going to use this to formulate our question tag. So it's going to be did you, to formulate a positive one, because already here it was contracted into making or qualifying the statement to be a negative statement. And is on holiday. And then we've got is that we can use to formulate a question tag, and the statement is positive. We know that if the statement is positive, the question tag is going to become negative. Remember, we also substitute the proper noun with a pronoun, so it's going to be isn't she. The students see it every day. We've got the students see it every day. It's going to be don't they, not don't they. Always be careful with subjects. It's going to be don't they, because this is a positive statement, and again remember, we don't have any auxiliary verb to use here. And then this way now we are going to check which words here between don't, does, did better qualify or is suited to or can be used here. And remember, with don't, you don't need to guess these things. Say the same way we use don't here. It was because the subject was in a plural form. It says they, and then here we also have students, plural form. That's why we used what? Don't. Mr. Presley doesn't know your father. We already have a contracted doesn't. This is the negative statement. We'll use this to formulate a question tag. It's going to be does he. Does he? a positive question tag because the statement was negative. And the last one, there are lots of cars. We have the word what? Are, and then it's going to be and they. All right, EnglishFal students, examiners will always ask you in question 5 to add a question tag into a statement. I hope this was rather impactful and fruitful to you guys. Please practice because language dynamics differ. You won't get the same sentences every time, so you need to know what to use in the absence of auxiliary verbs like I've indicated here, and also know the condition that which permit all these words to be used successfully, so to formulate what? A question tag. Remember, if a statement is positive, the question tag becomes negative. If the statement is negative, the question tag becomes positive. And how do you see that a question tag is negative or positive? When it is contracted with an apostrophe mark, you know that it's a negative question tag. Thank you so much.